Yeah, my skin tone is pale.
And how old are you?
29. Trying to figure out. 10. Probably in my teens, my early teens. An idol, kind of a Hindu idol.
Do you feel in your body? Do you feel like you have a body?
The reason this series occurred was because a friend of mine, Alu Ahmed Jamal, a TV producer, and we had a coffee up in London, and when I explained what hypnotic past life regression was, he was fascinated and suggested that we did a pilot to prove the concept. Alu's wife is Veena, and so that's how I know her. I have actually met her over the years at Alu's work on several occasions. I don't know her well, but I've met her before.
Okay. And if you look above the door, what's the number written above?
Trying to figure out. 1910.
1910. Okay. So just take a little time now to orient yourself. And I'd like you to look down at your feet. Are you wearing anything on them?
I feel like I've got stockings on. I think there's something on my feet.
What does it feel like?
Not sure.
That's okay. Just take a little time now to work up your body and take in what you're wearing. Take your time. Nothing's right or wrong. Your subconscious knows. Can you describe to me what you have on?
What keeps coming back is a pair of ballet shoes, flat shoes.
Mm-hmm.
Flat shoes, fabric shoes. They've got a strap across. Held by a little stone button. But they're flat.
Mm-hmm. And if you work your way up your body now, what are you wearing?
These stockings keep coming, and they're white stockings.
Mm-hmm.
White stockings. Yeah, it looks like I'm dressed up and ready to dance. White netted skirt, a bodice.
What's the bodice like?
It's pale, everything's pale, off-white, kind of cream. Sleeveless.
How's your hair done?
It's tied up. It's tied up tightly in a bun. My face is painted in white, like a white mask.
Does that signify anything, or is that normal?
I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, my skin tone is pale.
Do you know your name?
No,
How old are you?
I'm young. Young. Think probably in my teens, my early teens.
Mm-hmm. And what are you doing here today?
I don't really know. I'm just standing in a spot, looking at myself, trying to figure out.
Take a little time now and just look around you. Can you describe what you're seeing?
I don't see much around me. I see myself in this pale, in my pale clothing. I'm completely pale from head to toe in terms of colour, but my surroundings are dark.
You're more likely to do ballet as a child, and my impression was that early in the session, Vina was remembering a life as maybe a 10-year-old young girl who was into ballet, but that is speculation, nothing more.
And I can't see any shapes or anything visual around me. It's quite dark.
Is it dark because it's night time or just because you can't see?
No, I can see, but I just can't see any objects around me or anything that defines a space, except that it's just because it's quite dark. It's black.
Okay. And do you know what country you're in?
No,
You know the name of the place that you're in?
no.
Okay. So I'd like you to let those images fade. And go forward to that significant event now. And as the images start to reform, tell me where you find yourself.
I'm outside, and I keep coming back to this garden. It's a woodland garden, a woodland space.
What is it that you find yourself doing there?
I'm just walking through it on my own.
Is it your garden?
No, it's an extensive garden. More of a woodland. It's wild.
Are you alone?
I am alone.
How do you feel about that?
I feel good. It's nice to be alone.
Why is it nice to be alone?
There's peace and one's with one's own thoughts, and there's calmness around.
Are you not normally alone then?
I can be, but I prefer to be alone. I've taken myself to be alone here.
Okay, I'm going to ask you some questions now. And I want you to just accept whatever comes into your head. No need to question. Just see what comes to you, your subconscious knows. What's your name?
Vina,
How old are you?
29.
And what's the name of the place that you're in?
Don't really know.
And just to confirm, what date is it?
I don't know the date.
If you were to imagine what date it was, what date would you imagine?
I'm not really sure that there's one date that stands out in my mind. 1930 keeps coming back.
1930. Would you just for me, once again, just look down at your feet for me? What are you wearing on your feet?
It's those shoes again, those ballet shoes are back on my feet.
And if you were to look up your body, what are you wearing? Just take in what you're wearing.
Just those white tights, white stockings or tights. They're white, wrapped around my legs.
Are you wearing anything on your head? How's your hair?
My hair's definitely tied back. Tied back tightly in a bun.
And how old are you?
29.
She mentioned that she was dressed to dance, so she was wearing a bodice. She seemed as if she was wearing ballet kit, and she'd got a white mask that she was wearing. So it's not the kind of clothes that you'd expect someone to be wearing day to day. And initially I thought, well, she's a young girl and she's just got herself dressed up in ballet gear because she likes ballet and she likes being dressed up in a fancy costume. And so then we moved on maybe 20 years to later in the life of that person. And lo and behold, she's still wearing ballet shoes, which I thought was bizarre.
Vina was an interesting one. She started off quite strong and we thought, oh yeah, this could be a past life. She was talking about ballet shoes with a little bar across them and a button, or she said a stone, and white stockings. She didn't say tights, which was interesting, white stockings. And then she sort of described this bodice and went up to her face being painted. And then when we asked about her hair, she said it was scraped back into quite a tight bun. So very ballet-esque.
Do you have any makeup on?
I do. I have a little bit of makeup on.
What do you do? What do you do in this life?
I don't really know. I feel I'm wandering in this woodlands and I'm not sure what I do.
She was wandering, when we sort of moved on, she was wandering in woodland and she was older. She did say about 1910 and then was wandering around 1930, so quite a few years later, but still in the same shoes, still in the same ballet shoes. So sometimes we can have confusion. It might be that the subject isn't deep enough, it might be that they're confused and they're not drawing through, pulling through the right memories and they're getting confused. So we weren't really sure about that.
Did you notice how she was never with anybody? She was always in a area of solitude. She was in a woodland. She never mentioned anybody else at all, as if she had a totally solitary existence. It was very calm and she seemed to like the solitude. She seemed to like to be on her own. She found the peace comforting, but she never mentioned anybody else. It's almost as if there was nobody else in her life. It just almost struck me that it was as if she was a ghost.
Let those images fade now, and I want you to move forward in time. Just let me know what you're seeing.
There's nothing specific, but I see a vision of an idol, kind of a Hindu idol, floating past me. And it could be a spiritual event that I'm taking part in.
You know where it is?
Not really, no. It's a mixture of places.
Is there a particular time or date?
No. Time is, I mean, in terms of whether it's night or day, it's definitely day. But the timing, the date is not clear.
How old are you?
I'm young, but I'm not sure the actual age.
Do you know your name?
No.
Why are you at this event? Just let your subconscious answer. It knows.
I'm an onlooker. I'm there, I'm present, but I'm just watching.
Do you feel in your body? Do you feel like you have a body?
Yes.
Do you feel like you're standing on earth or ground?
No.
The Hindu ceremony was quite interesting, simply because she was hovering above, and normally when we go back into a past life, we're actually in the person, viewing it from that person's view, but she was hovering above and sort of taking in this scene. And then when we asked her name, she did actually say she was Veena. So, okay. But I got a sense that perhaps we had touched on life between lives. My take on life between lives is that we live many lives, and as we pass from one life to the other, we don't always go straight from one to the other. Sometimes we rest if we've had a traumatic experience in the life that we've just left. Maybe we've been killed, maybe we've had an accident, maybe we were really ill with cancer. And I feel that there's a rest period where we probably get healing from spirit or whatever a person believes. And I think within that time period, when you're ready to come again to learn some more lessons, that's when you can start looking and deciding and maybe discussing with guides what you want to learn the next time round. And I think that's when you can look at scenarios and look at situations, maybe look at a family and decide that you want to be part of that family or part of a culture, learning something from a different culture. So I think that's what I see as life between lives, is that time where you are resting and you're having your space, and then you're kind of deciding what you're going to do next. And life between lives is where we have had one life that's ended, we're in between the next life, and we're kind of choosing what we want to do next. And there have been some scenarios where people have said, oh, I chose my mum, or I looked down and saw my parents and I chose them. So maybe we do get a chance to look at a scenario and see whether that's the life that we want to go into. And she was looking down at this scene and saying she was Veena and describing it. And actually, she is called Veena and she is Hindu in this life. So we did find that quite interesting. The connection between the young girl with the ballet shoes and that, I'm not sure. I'm on the edge with that one. I don't know whether that was connected or two separate things.
Later on in the hypnotic session, then Veena was floating or above a Hindu wedding procession or a procession, and we always assumed that was a different, that was between lives, and that she had lived a life of the person that wore the ballet shoes, and then we thought that maybe she'd passed on, she was between lives, and then she was floating above the Hindu procession. And I found that the floating above the Hindu procession quite interesting, because she remembered her life as being a pale-skinned woman. Then she was floating above the Hindu procession, and in this life she is a Hindu. And so I just wondered whether that was just prior to this life, where she was following maybe a procession of her parents getting married or something like that, and that's when she decided that a Hindu life would be very interesting and chose that life. It's all a supposition, but I just thought that was quite interesting. But it did then strike me that at no stage during the whole session did Veena mention anybody else. She didn't use a different name. It was almost as if she was this ghost that was wearing the ballet kit because that's what she liked to wear, that was wandering in solitude for years and years, but eventually floated above the Hindu procession, and that's the end of the story. But that's my take on it, that it's almost like she was a ghost.
What are you standing on?
I'm just floating. I feel I'm high, floating high up, and floating alongside it.
And you're observing
Yes.
what's going on.
Yes.
How does it feel to be there?
Yes. It's pleasant.
Because generally my clients, when they go back into a past life, they are in their body. They might still be aware of who they are sitting in the chair and who they came into the session as, but they are talking as if they are that person. They are seeing through that person's eyes, and they look down at their feet and they tell me what they're wearing. So floating above a scene is quite unusual.
Veena is a Hindu, as I understand it, in this life, and wouldn't it be interesting if, when she was floating above the Hindu procession, that was actually the moment that she decided that her next incarnation would be as a Hindu? Maybe even it could have been that it was her parents' wedding that she was observing, and a year or so later, then she was their daughter.
I find Life Between Lives quite fascinating. I've had quite a few subjects where they've opened a door and stepped into mist and they're just floating and they can't feel or see anything. And I quite often think that that's the bit between, and they're just sort of resting. So I've had that quite a lot. And I have done some reading about Life Between Lives, and children talk about Life Between Lives quite a lot, actually. Some people sort of say, I see, some children sort of said, I see your footsteps in the snow, and I chose you as my mum. It's a very fascinating subject. I haven't had many clients, I've got to admit, that have gone between lives, but it's certainly something that I would like to have a look at deeper. I mean, obviously it could be anything because we have no ultimate proof. It was an instinct feeling for me that it was Life Between Lives because of how she was describing this scene and the fact that she is Hindu in this life and that she is called Veena in this life. But it could literally have been that she was confused and floating around trying to find another life. Sometimes people spontaneously go into another life. So you take them back to one life, and for whatever reason, when you sort of say go forward in time, they go forward to another life very quickly. Whether that is because there's not so much to talk about in the life that they had been taken back to and they choose another one, it could be many, many reasons. But I felt personally that I would have read it as Life Between Lives for me. The wandering in the woodland was quite an interesting one because I hadn't really thought about anything other than she was struggling to find images, struggling to get connected to those memories. But Nigel actually came up with quite a good point and said perhaps she's a ghost because there was no one around, and she was sort of almost ethereally wandering around this environment, kind of enjoying being on her own in a way. And she was still wearing these ballet shoes. And I hadn't really thought of that, and I thought that was actually quite an interesting scenario because we have a lot of books and a lot of study on Life Between Lives, on past lives. And if you can go back to a past life, why can't you go back to your spirit when it was a ghost? I've never really read or heard of anything like that. And I did find that quite fascinating, because there's absolutely no reason why she shouldn't connect to her as a ghost. She certainly was, the way she was talking, she certainly felt like she was very alone. But she didn't sound like she was lonely and looking for something. It was almost like, I'm here and I'm existing and I'm just wandering around in these woods. So Nigel's concept could actually be quite an interesting one to look into.
Wide awake, wide awake, wide awake. And you can wiggle your toes and come back slowly. Take a sip of water when you're ready. That was an interesting one.
Well, it was interesting.
So, the floating, I've just read about this. The floating was life between lives.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, because I said, are you in your body? Yes, because I suppose you'd be aware of your body. Your feet weren't on the ground and you were observing, but it was the floating. I've got all goosebumpy. You were floating along the side of it, and I was like, this is you as a spirit. Yeah.
Wow.
That was really interesting.
Wow.
1910, interestingly, doesn't tie in with the clothes that you were describing. I felt you were jumping. I felt that. I suspect that you've probably had quite a few lives.
Yeah.
But your subconscious was like, I'm not sure whether I want to go back there. So we were dipping in and dipping out.
Yeah.
Because the painted face would suggest 18th century. 1930, you probably wouldn't have had little flat shoes. We don't know for sure. But it was interesting that you said stockings rather than tights. So that was definitely very period. Flat shoes and a bodice. To say flat shoes and a bodice, I was almost thinking 1810 by that sort of period. But you know, I was trying to get dates out of you, but you weren't. I don't think you really wanted.
I wasn't
I think
going
your
in.
subconscious didn't want to go there.
I wasn't going in.
There was a
I
bit
could
of
feel a
resistance.
resistance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, interestingly, I thought at a ball, because that's the kind of clothes that you'd wear at a ball. Because you said 1910, but I was like, that sounds like sort of the Regency period would have been about 1810, 1820, and you would have had flat ballet shoes with white stockings and a bar across them. So, especially the white face.
Yeah. I feel a bit emotional.
In what respect? What type of emotion?
Don't know actually. Just a little sensitive to that. Walking through the garden.
Okay.
Just sitting there and kind of with my own thoughts. Yeah.
Okay.
Quite a lonely life.
Yeah.
I think you shut off things from the past. You're at a time in your life where you've kind of accepted the past, and it's only when you go back and you sort of think about it and talk about it that it brings up a lot of emotion.
I sense that you didn't want to do too much. That's why I didn't prod too much.
I think it's really it's hard. It's hard actually. It's been hard. I'm not allowing it to.
Yeah.
I've got quite a few barriers.
But you do look quite emotional.
Yeah.
So I had two different experiences. So I was in one space, feeling this emptiness around me and darkness, and the other one was then I was lifted into this space where there was this celebration. Although when I say celebration, I was trying to figure out what the sound was, and I couldn't hear anything, but I knew something was happening. So and there were people, but I couldn't hear a sound. So often when I've dreamt, I've not heard sound.
I suspected when you were hovering, when you were floating, that was life between lives, not the body that she was standing in with the feet. I think you went and you were kind of free of your body. I sensed that. I may be wrong, but I felt when you were watching that Hindu, you weren't the body that you were talking about. That's what I sense, but I may be wrong.